Have you ever been left by the one you loved most, without a word? One morning, Naledi's husband said he was going on a business trip. No kiss goodbye, he never came back. She called his office, only to find out he'd quit 2 weeks ago. Days later, a message came from an unknown number. "He's with me. Stop looking." But the real shock wasn't the betrayal. It was how she rose after it. Naledi, an African nurse in a quiet coastal town, mother of 2, didn't break down. She didn't beg. That night, she wrote a survival list. Pay rent, buy medicine, find a new job. No crying, no weakness. 5 years passed. She worked 2 jobs, raised her kids with love and grit, and then an invitation arrived. A wedding, her husband, and the other woman. He even scribbled a note. "It would mean a lot if you came. I've changed." She went, not for revenge but for closure. At the lavish ceremony, Naledi walked in, calmly placed their marriage certificate on the table. "We were never divorced." Gasps, whispers. The wedding unraveled. She turned, leaving behind only one sentence. "I was silent for 5 years. Now you'll hear my 5 minutes." That clip went viral. He lost his job, his deals, his image. Naledi? She went home, hugged her children, and moved on. She didn't need revenge. She had survived. Sometimes living well is the most beautiful revenge. By the way, where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments so we can send love from Naledi wherever you are. The sound of a zipper cut through the quiet morning. Naledi froze for half a second, her fingers still sticky with orange marmalade as she spread toast for the kids. The scrape of that zipper, metal teeth biting together, felt too loud, too final. Kelechi was by the doorway, crouched over a suitcase, rolling up his sleeves like a man getting ready for a new beginning. He said it so casually, almost too easily. "Just a few days, love. A quick work trip." Naledi looked up from the counter. "You didn't mention it before." He smiled without meeting her eyes, busy adjusting his tie. "Last-minute thing? You know how the office is?" Musa came running down the hall with his baseball cap backward, still half asleep but excited. "Dad, you'll come to my game Saturday, right? Coach says I'll pitch." "Of course," Kelechi said, ruffling the boy's hair. "I'll bring that glove I promised, too." Zola sat at the table, legs swinging, tracing circles in her cereal milk. "And my donuts," she said softly. "Your donuts, too?" But when he turned to grab his suitcase, Naledi noticed he didn't lean down to kiss them. He didn't even glance back at the framed photo on the wall, the one from their 10th anniversary where her hair had blown into his face and they'd laughed until they cried. He walked out into the pale light like someone stepping off a ledge, and the door closed with the soft, deliberate click of a man sealing something away. All morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. The kids left for school. Naledi washed the breakfast plates, folded the kitchen towel 3 times, placed it neatly on the rack. Her routine steadied her heartbeat. She changed into her clinic scrubs, grabbed her old canvas bag, and walked out into the cool Johannesburg air. The street smelled of wet dust and car exhaust. She told herself not to think. Thinking led to questions, and questions led to ache. At the clinic, she stitched a boy's knee, handed out inhalers, smiled at elderly women with trembling hands. Her body worked on autopilot, but her mind drifted, back to the suitcase, the way Kelechi's voice had lacked its usual warmth. She told herself it was fatigue. Men could be distant when they traveled. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he was just tired of the same 4 walls. On her lunch break, she sat alone in the staff lounge, scrolling through her phone. No messages. She typed, "Have you landed yet?" and hit send. The screen showed delivered, no read. That evening, after putting Zola to bed and reminding Musa to brush his teeth, she called him again. Once, twice, the same empty ring. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was hollow, as if the world had slipped a beat. She told herself not to panic. She'd always been the calm one. She made tea, sat by the window, and waited. By Friday night, the quiet had begun to hum. Saturday came bright and crisp. The baseball field smelled of cut grass and dust. Parents clapped, shouted, waved banners. Musa stood on the mound, scanning the bleachers. His eyes flicked from face to face, searching. Naledi waved, smiling hard enough that her cheeks hurt. He saw her, forced a grin, then pitched the ball with everything he had. The crack of the bat echoed across the field, solid, strong, perfect. Everyone cheered. After the game, he walked toward her, head low. "He didn't come," he said. Naledi swallowed the sting. "He'll call. Maybe his meeting ran late." But when they got home, she dialed again. Still no answer. The phone rang into nothing. That night, while the kids slept, she sat on the living room couch staring at the dark screen of her phone. The ticking clock on the wall grew unbearable. Every sound in the house, the refrigerator hum, the creak of the pipes, felt magnified. Something inside her whispered that the trip had ended the moment it began. She picked up the home phone and dialed his company. "Good evening, this is Global Imports," a woman's voice chirped. "Yes," Naledi said, her voice steady. "May I speak to Mr. Kelechi Okoro, please?" A pause, paper shuffling. "I'm sorry, ma'am, Mr. Okoro no longer works here." Naledi blinked. "I think you're mistaken. He left for a business trip." The woman hesitated. "No, ma'am, he resigned 2 weeks ago." Naledi's throat tightened. "Resigned?" "Yes, I'm sorry, ma'am. Is there anything else I can help you with?" The polite tone made it worse. Naledi hung up slowly, hand trembling, the dial tone bleeding into the silence. She sat there motionless, hearing only the tick, tick, tick of the clock. On the coffee table lay a half-burned candle, wax-hardened in uneven ridges. The smell of last night's stew still clung to the air. Everything was ordinary, terribly, cruelly ordinary. But inside her chest, the world was splitting open. She walked into their bedroom. His side of the bed was smooth, untouched. The closet door hung ajar. She opened it wider. A line of empty hangers swayed slightly, as if still remembering the weight they once carried. His golf bag was gone. So were the brown leather shoes he wore on Sundays. Even the cologne bottle, half used, was missing from the dresser. A single cufflink lay on the carpet, glinting in the weak lamplight. She crouched to pick it up. It felt cold, foreign, like holding a secret you didn't ask for. She pressed it into her palm until it hurt. Outside, thunder rolled distantly. The first drops of rain tapped the windows, slow at first, then faster, until the whole house sounded like it was underwater. She sat back on the edge of the bed, staring at the open closet, and whispered the question she already knew the answer to. Why? No one answered. The rain thickened, blurring the streetlights into hazy gold orbs. Naledi stood, walked to the window, and watched the water run down the glass like veins of silver. The reflection of her face merged with the city beyond. 2 worlds overlapping, one still believing, one already mourning. In the hallway, she heard Zola cough softly in her sleep. Naledi turned, tucked the girl's blanket tighter, brushed a stray curl from her forehead. For a moment, peace returned, a fragile, borrowed kind of peace. Then her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it, pulse racing. The screen lit up, no caller ID. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the green icon, then answered. "Nothing, just static." Then a faint exhale, someone breathing on the other end. "Kelechi?" she whispered. The line crackled, hissed. Then a click, silence. She stared at the phone, waiting for it to ring again. It didn't. Hours later, when she finally drifted into a shallow sleep on the couch, the television still flickered faint blue light across her face. In her dream, the zipper sound returned, that same slow closing, sealing her out. She woke to sunlight spilling through the blinds, heartbeat racing. Her phone was still in her hand. The call log showed nothing. No missed calls. No unknown number. Had she imagined it? She stood, joints stiff, and walked into the kitchen. The smell of coffee grounds lingered from yesterday. The cereal box lay open. On the counter sat Kelechi's mug, the one with a chip near the handle, the one she never touched because he always said it was his. She turned it over. Inside was a faint ring of dried coffee, almost shaped like a crescent moon. Something about it made her chest ache. She washed it carefully, dried it, and placed it back in the cabinet as though returning it to its rightful place. By afternoon, she decided to go through his desk drawers, bills, receipts, pens, a stray hotel keycard. Nothing more. Yet the emptiness was an answer in itself. When Musa came home from school, his eyes were hopeful. "Did Dad call?" Naledi forced a smile. "Not yet, sweetheart. Maybe tomorrow." But that night, when she lay in bed listening to the storm outside, she knew there wouldn't be a tomorrow that included him. She dreamt again of that morning, him zipping the suitcase, the click of the door. Except this time, when she followed him outside in her dream, there was no car, no street, no sound, only a vast field stretching endlessly, his silhouette walking away until it dissolved into fog. When she woke, the air felt heavy, almost metallic, as if the rain had drawn something out of the earth and left it suspended in the air. She went to the front door. Muddy footprints stained the porch. Hers from yesterday, maybe the children's. But one set, slightly larger, trailed off toward the gate. She knelt, touching the faint impression. The edges had softened in the rain, but they were unmistakable. He hadn't just left. He'd erased his way back. A horn sounded in the distance. A dog barked. Life went on outside like nothing had changed. Naledi straightened, wiped her hands on her pajama pants, and locked the door. That night, she wrote a single line on the back of an old grocery list and pinned it to the fridge. "Don't wait for ghosts." When she turned off the light, the hum of the refrigerator filled the kitchen, a low, steady rhythm like a heartbeat trying to remember itself. In the dark, Naledi lay awake, listening to that sound. Every pulse of it reminded her that he wasn't dead. He'd simply chosen another life and left her to haunt this one alone. Somewhere between the ticking clock and the quiet rain, the truth settled over her like a second skin. The man she loved had disappeared long before his body ever left the house. And yet a whisper deep inside her refused to let go. What if something happened? What if he needs help? That question, sharp and desperate, clung to her until dawn. By morning, she was no longer the same woman who spread marmalade on toast. She poured black coffee, packed the kids' lunches, and stared at the closed door for a long, silent minute before stepping outside. The light was too bright, the world too normal. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the man who once called her love was breathing the same air, walking the same earth, just not in her world anymore. The coffee tasted bitter, like burnt sugar and truth. She swallowed hard and whispered to the empty kitchen, "Wherever you are, I hope you remember what you left behind." Then she wiped the counter clean, turned off the light, and walked into the day that would never be ordinary again. Her phone buzzed before dawn. It wasn't the alarm. It wasn't a reminder. It was a single vibration, sharp, out of place, like a key turning in a lock that wasn't supposed to open. Naledi blinked against the early gray light filtering through the curtains. Her arm reached instinctively. The screen glowed cold against her palm. No name, no history, just a number, and a message. "He's with me, stop looking." For a moment she didn't move, not even to breathe. The room was quiet. Musa's light snores drifted down the hallway. Zola's stuffed bunny lay curled on the couch from last night's cartoon hour. The coffee she never finished sat half full on the table. But the text sat louder than all of it. She stared at the words again. A stranger's claim, no apology, no explanation, just that. A full stop. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She didn't reply. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the phone. She just sat there, frozen, as if someone had reached through the device and pressed a hand to her chest. The background on her phone, the family photo, mocked her. Kelechi's smile, his arms wrapped around the kids, Zola on his lap, half asleep. He looked straight into the camera, like he always did, like he had nothing to hide. Naledi unlocked the phone, scrolled up through old messages. "When's your shift ending? I'll pick up Musa if you're tired. I miss your jollof rice, lies, all of it. Or maybe echoes of a man who used to mean what he said." She took a long breath and got up. Her feet moved on their own, into the kitchen, flicking the kettle on, wiping the counter that didn't need cleaning. Her body needed something to do while her mind unraveled. By 7 a.m., she stood outside Zuri's door, arms wrapped tight against her chest. The door opened before she knocked. "You okay?" Zuri asked, already barefoot, her scarf half wrapped, sleep still clinging to her voice. Naledi didn't answer, just held up the phone. Zuri read the message, her jaw clenched. "That bastard," she muttered. Then louder, more grounded, more herself. "Come in, I'll make tea." Inside, Zuri's apartment was a mess of color and chaos. Houseplants draped over every shelf, music theory books stacked under the coffee table, a red scarf flung over the TV. It smelled like burnt toast and lemon hand cream. Naledi sat, finally letting her shoulders drop. "We need to find out who she is," Zuri said, already pulling her laptop closer. "I don't want to know her name," Naledi murmured. "I just need the truth." "That is the truth," Zuri shot back. "She told you. He's with her." "No," Naledi said, quieter. "That's her version. I want mine." Zuri paused, then nodded. She always did understand when to push and when to pull back. They started with the bank. Naledi logged into Kelechi's joint account. Most of the transactions were predictable: groceries, utilities, fuel. But one thing stood out: a monthly charge she hadn't noticed before. Secure box storage, Industrial Zone B. Zuri leaned closer. That's not near his office. Naledi zoomed in on the date. The charge had been there for months, regular, quiet, hidden in plain sight. "We're going," Zuri said. No questions, just certainty. The drive took 30 minutes through roads stained with red dust and sun-faded billboards. The storage facility sat behind a chain-link fence, rows of identical doors lined up like mausoleums. Inside the office, a young man with bored eyes and a chewing stick in his mouth looked up. "Name?" "Kelechi Okoro," Naledi said, holding her breath. He typed, "Unit 14. Sorry, ma'am. He's the only registered user." Zuri stepped forward. "He's her husband. Can't you—" "I said registered user. No ID, no access." Outside, Naledi stood by the fence, fingers curled around the metal. The padlocks glinted in the sun, dozens of them, secrets behind every door. Her jaw tightened. Back home, she opened the bedroom closet again, this time with new eyes. His wedding suit was gone. So was the suitcase that her father gave them. The monogrammed travel kit, the blue tie he wore every Christmas. She touched the empty hanger, feeling the absence like a bruise. It wasn't just that he left. It was that he planned to. Later that night, when the kids were in bed and the house had gone still, her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't words. It was a photo. Kelechi, sitting at a rooftop bar, laughing, his arm draped around a woman she'd never seen before, skin like honey, braided hair, red lips curved into a private smile. He still wore his wedding ring. Naledi stared, not blinking, not breathing. She lowered the phone slowly, placed it face down on the table. Then, without warning, she stood and walked to the kitchen sink, turned on the tap, let the water run until it steamed. She reached for a dish, scrubbed it until her fingers ached. One, then another, then the entire rack. Her breath grew ragged, but her hands kept moving. At some point, tears blurred her vision, warm and fast. She didn't wipe them, didn't shush herself. For the first time in weeks, she let the grief in. Not quietly, not politely. She wept until her shirt clung to her, until her knees gave out and she slid down to the tiled floor, back pressed to the cabinet door, surrounded by the echoes of everything she'd once believed in. Rain began to fall outside, gentle at first, then steadier. It sounded like applause, or accusation, or both. Still on the floor, Naledi whispered, "You didn't even take the kid's picture." Her voice cracked. "You took the ring, but not their picture." She reached for the phone again, stared at the image, zoomed in. Kelechi's hand around the wine glass, a familiar scar near the thumb. That hand had once cradled her face, had once pulled her into dances in the kitchen while Zola giggled under the table. Now it held someone else's world. Zuri showed up the next morning with bagels and a look that said, "Don't argue." "He sent a picture?" she asked. Naledi nodded, showed her. Zuri stared. "He's still wearing the damn ring? Maybe to make himself feel less like a thief." Zuri tossed the phone onto the couch like it was poisoned. "We should go to the police." "No. Naledi, I don't want him back. I don't want to chase him. I just want to understand how long he's been planning this and why I didn't see it." Zuri exhaled. "So what now?" Naledi stood steadier than the day before. "Now I look for answers, not for him, for me." That night, while folding laundry, Naledi found one of Kelechi's socks stuck between the bedsheets. She held it, stared at it, then slowly placed it in a shoebox with the cufflink, the broken picture frame, and the spare charger he used to steal from her drawer. She labeled the box, Proof. At midnight, her phone vibrated again. A new message, same number. He said you wouldn't understand, that you were always too busy playing mother to remember how to be a wife. She didn't cry. She didn't throw the phone. She simply typed, "Tell him I was both, and I still am." She hit send, then blocked the number. She walked to Zola's room, kissed her daughter's forehead, then moved to Moose's door, stood there for a long moment, listened to the steady rise and fall of his breath, laid her hand gently against the wood, and whispered, "You'll never have to beg anyone to love you." Then she turned back down the hallway. The rain had stopped, but something deeper had begun. The pen left a deep gouge in the paper, as if the words themselves needed to bleed to be true. "Pay rent, buy Moose's inhaler, call a lawyer, don't fall apart." Naledi capped the pen and set it down beside her chipped coffee mug. The list stared up at her, 4 crooked lines written in half-light, shaking slightly from the tremble in her hand. She'd been up since before dawn. The house still smelled like last night's burnt rice and the lemon-scented mop she'd used to scrub the hallway twice. Once for the floor, once for the anger. The rain had stopped, but the silence it left behind was heavier. It settled on the window panes, thick on the roof, wrapped around her shoulders like a wet coat she couldn't shrug off. She stood, shoved the list into her pocket, and walked to the bathroom. The mirror offered no comfort, just a tired face, dry lips, and eyes too wide for someone with nowhere to go. She washed her face, twice, no reason, just to feel the cold. When Zuri knocked at 8:10 sharp, Naledi was already dressed. "I brought real coffee. None of that sadness in a jar you drink," Zuri said, pushing past the door. Naledi said nothing, just nodded toward the kitchen. Zuri glanced at the paper on the table, eyebrows pinching together. "What's this?" "A plan," Naledi said. Zuri poured coffee into mismatched mugs. "A plan for what?" "To stay standing." She didn't say more. She didn't have to. The air between them was already full of all the things that had collapsed. Zuri pulled a chair, sipped, and looked down. "I asked a friend," she began carefully. "She's a paralegal, said it's time you talk to someone about custody, about protections, finances." Naledi's eyes didn't move. "I'm not trying to find him." "I know. I'm just trying not to break." Zuri nodded slowly. "Then let's figure out what he left behind." The two of them spread papers across the floor. Bank statements, insurance forms, old receipts, pay stubs. Naledi's handwriting appeared on some margins. Budget notes, grocery calculations. Evidence of a woman holding the house together while a man planned his exit. Halfway through the pile, Zuri froze. She held up a folder Naledi hadn't noticed. Inside, life insurance documents, the kind of paper no one ever looks at until someone dies. Only this one had been updated. "Beneficiary changed," Zuri said slowly. "Look." Naledi leaned in, her chest tightened. "Previous beneficiary, Naledi Okoro. New beneficiary, Nyasha Moyo." She didn't speak. Her ears rang. Zuri whispered, "He rewrote the future." Naledi's voice was low. "He made sure I got nothing, not even by accident." She stood suddenly, walked to the sink, gripped its edges until her knuckles turned white. The world tilted slightly, like the floor had shifted under one foot. It wasn't just abandonment, it was premeditated erasure. Every smile, every "I love you," every grocery list written on the back of his old pay slips, all leading to this. "He planned this," she said, eyes unfocused. "This wasn't escape. It was replacement." Zuri stood too, quiet, ready to catch her if she tipped too far. Naledi didn't cry. Not then. Instead, she walked to the hallway, opened the cabinet where the medicine was kept, pulled out Moose's inhaler, checked the dosage, expiration date, shook it once, then placed it in her bag like it was gold. She picked up the rent envelope, still half full, folded the life insurance copy beside it, then her fingers brushed the small photograph taped inside the cabinet door, a younger Kalechi holding baby Zola, wide-eyed and wrinkled and crying. He looked proud, whole, real. She didn't rip it down. She simply closed the door. The day passed in pieces. She walked to the pharmacy, picked up groceries, answered 3 patient emails from the clinic, cooked rice and beans with too much salt, sat through Moose's homework questions about decimal places, listened to Zola hum while drawing on the living room floor. Everything ordinary became sacred. Everything sacred became evidence of survival. At night, she stood outside Musa's door again, listened to the soft wheeze in his sleep. He always slept with one foot outside the blanket. She smiled barely, then turned back down the hall. In her room, she sat on the edge of the bed and let the day collapse all at once. The room was dark except for the glow of the street lamp outside. She didn't move, just stared into the quiet. Then her phone buzzed. Another message. Unknown number. No words this time. Just an emoji. A ring. She stared at it, jaw clenched, breath shallow. Then it came again. Another message. He still wears it, says it keeps him grounded. Her chest burned. Not from pain, but from rage. She blocked the number without replying, then opened the drawer and pulled out her own ring. Heavy, simple, the inside engraved with his initials and their wedding date. She stared at it for a long time, then walked to the kitchen, turned on the stove, lit the smallest flame, held the ring over it, just long enough to feel the heat reach her fingers, just long enough to make herself feel something that wasn't betrayal. Then she dropped it into a glass of cold water, watched the steam rise. The sound hissed like a warning. She left it there and returned to the couch. Outside, thunder rumbled again. But this time, she wasn't afraid of the storm. She welcomed it. Somewhere between midnight and morning, Naledi woke to the sound of her own breath. Not crying, just breathing. Steady, alive. She stood, walked barefoot to the window, and opened it. The rain had started again, soft and slow. It tapped against the glass like an old friend asking to be let in. She didn't close it. She let the night in, let the cold wrap around her spine, let the damp wind touch her skin like a promise that nothing, not even grief, was permanent. Behind her, Musa stirred. Zola murmured something in her sleep, and Naledi turned, took one last look at the wet ring inside the glass and whispered, "I will never be invisible again." Then she closed the curtain, locked the window, and went to bed, not because she was tired, but because morning would come and she would be ready. The envelope sat alone on the kitchen counter, fat with electricity. Naledi stared at it as if it were a coiled snake, not a bill. The bold red stamp, final notice, looked like a verdict. "Happy birthday to me," she thought, and let out a breathless laugh. It was a hollow sound. Even the walls didn't bother echoing it. The morning sunlight filtered through the grimy curtains in strips, falling across chipped tile and stacked dishes. Outside, a dog barked. A bus rumbled past. Somewhere in the apartment upstairs, a toddler was crying. She didn't move for a while. 37. No party, no cake, no cards. Just an envelope she couldn't afford to ignore. She tore it open, the numbers blurred, the increase circled in yellow highlighter like a warning or a dare. She crumpled it, dropped it in the trash, then fished it out again, smoothed the creases with the back of her hand, folded it neatly and tucked it into her bag. There was a rhythm to survival. She had learned it well. She slipped on her gray uniform, clean, though the fabric had thinned at the elbows, pinned her name tag, Naledi Okoro, LPN, and grabbed her lunch from the fridge. 2 boiled eggs, a bruised apple, leftover rice in a cracked plastic container. The hallway smelled like damp concrete and cheap cleaning spray. She locked the door and pressed her fingers to the knob for half a second longer than needed, just to feel the stillness. Just to remember she was the one holding it all together. Naledi worked 2 jobs now, days at the clinic, nights cleaning offices. She didn't complain. Complaining used up breath better saved for carrying groceries up 3 flights of stairs or helping Musa through asthma attacks at 3 a.m. Her body had grown leaner, stronger, more efficient, like a machine built from exhaustion and grit. At the clinic, she moved quickly, taking vitals, refilling prescriptions, reassuring patients who forgot things or shook too much to hold their pills. Her smile was soft, her voice calm. No one ever guessed how close to the edge she lived. At night, she changed uniforms in the staff bathroom, swapped her nurse badge for a ring of janitor keys. In the empty corridors of glass buildings, her footsteps echoed. The smell of ammonia clung to her. The mop became a metronome. Back and forth, back and forth. Zuri stopped by once a week, always with something sweet in a paper box, always with a sharp joke to cut the silence. "You know," she said once, watching Naledi fix a leaking pipe under the sink, "you'd make a damn good war general." "I'm not trying to win," Naledi said. "I'm trying not to drown." Zuri never asked about Kelechi anymore. She didn't need to. His absence had become its own kind of presence, like smoke in the walls, invisible, but always there. The children were growing fast. Musa had turned 15, taller than her now, shoulders squared, hands always restless with a ball or a pencil or a piece of wire he was trying to bend into something useful. He didn't ask about his father anymore, but sometimes, when a car door slammed outside, his head would turn just a little too quickly. Zola was 11, quiet and steady. Her drawings lined the fridge, fields, skies, a house with only 3 figures standing in front of it, always 3. They didn't talk much about what happened, not because it didn't matter, but because some truths were too heavy to say out loud. So they held them in the spaces between, like bricks in a wall they all leaned against. One Thursday afternoon, Naledi got the call. She was folding laundry on the living room floor, the hum of the fan behind her. Zola was in her room. Musa was at practice. The voice on the other end was warm but unfamiliar. "Is this Ms. Okoro?" "Yes." "This is Coach Themba from Westridge High. I wanted to let you know, Musa's been selected for the district sports scholarship. It's based on athletic performance and personal resilience. He mentioned you. Your name came up more than once." There was a pause. "I just thought you should know. It's not just about him throwing a good pitch. It's about the story behind it." Naledi didn't speak, couldn't. "Ms. Okoro?" "I'm here," she said, voice thick. She thanked him, hung up, and sat frozen for a long time. Then something inside her gave way. She wept, not from grief, not from anger, but from pride, wild and full and raw, the kind that shook her from the inside out. Musa came home to find her sitting in the kitchen, tear-streaked but smiling. He froze. "Mom?" "You got the scholarship," she said. "They called." His eyes widened. Then he dropped his bag and wrapped his arms around her, and for a moment, just one, they were a family untouched by betrayal. That night she couldn't sleep. The apartment was too quiet, her thoughts too loud. She reached into the drawer beside her bed and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a pair of pearl earrings, gifts from her mother-in-law long ago, back when they all still believed. She hadn't worn them since Kelechi left, but tonight she ran her fingers over them. They were smooth, cool, real. She clipped them on, then stood in front of the mirror, unsure of who she expected to see. Her reflection stared back, older, thinner, sharper, but not broken. There were lines near her mouth now, not from smiling, but from holding back words too often. She smiled anyway. It was the first time in years it felt true. In the morning she wore them to work. Nobody noticed. But she did. Later that week, while sweeping the office stairwell during her night shift, she paused by the window. Outside, the city shimmered with tired lights, buses, motorbikes, late-night lovers on street corners. She looked out at it all, every moment still moving, even if she wasn't part of it. She whispered, "You thought I'd disappear." She touched the pearl at her ear. "But I stayed. I endured." As she turned to go, her phone buzzed again, a number she hadn't seen in years. She stared at it, then answered, but there was no voice, just breathing. Just the sound of someone realizing they'd dialed a woman who no longer needed them. She waited, then ended the call herself. Her voice was steady now, her spine straight. Outside, the streetlights flickered. Inside, she placed the phone face down, walked to her bed, and whispered into the dark, "I survived you." It arrived without a sound. Tucked among crumpled flyers and supermarket coupons, slipped like a blade between bills. Naledi didn't notice it until she emptied the mailbox onto the kitchen table, and one envelope refused to fall flat. It gleamed, clean, too clean, white as fresh linen, trimmed in gold. No logo, no return address. Her hands hesitated. She had seen this kind of envelope before, at weddings, baby showers, fundraisers she could never afford to attend. But none of those made her palms sweat. She slid a butter knife under the seal. Inside was thick, glossy cardstock, warm to the touch like it had just been printed. Her name was there, written in blue ink by hand, carefully curved. Not a machine. Kelechi and Nyasha cordially invite Ms. Naledi Okoro to celebrate their union in love. The date was next month. The venue, an upscale seaside resort, the kind with fountains out front and white-gloved staff who called you ma'am even when they meant otherwise. There was a handwritten note, separate from the card. It would mean a lot if you came. I've changed. Kay. The room tilted. She sat down hard, the chair scraping against the floor like a scream no one voiced. For a long time, she didn't move. The invitation stared at her, obscene in its elegance. Her name, printed in cursive beside his, like someone had rewritten the script of her life and handed her a ticket to watch it performed without her. She didn't realize she'd called Zuri until her friend burst through the door, breathless. "Tell me you're joking." Naledi didn't answer. Zuri snatched the invitation off the table, skimmed it, then slapped it down like it burned. "What kind of psychopath?" "He wrote it," Naledi said softly, with his own hand.
That's not handwriting, that's a slap.
Zuri's voice cracked. "He left you with 2 kids, a crushed life, and now he wants you to... what? Applaud his new beginning?" Naledi looked at the window. Light moved across the floor in trembling stripes. Her voice was calm, but her throat felt raw. "I'm not going for him." Zuri stared. "You're not seriously thinking?" "I'm going for me." A silence stretched between them, not angry, just heavy. Naledi stood and walked to the mirror above the sink. Her face looked the same, tired, lined, but something deeper shimmered behind the eyes. "I need to see the end of it," she said, "with my own eyes, so I know it's real." Zuri crossed her arms. "You don't owe him a thing." "No," Naledi whispered, "but I owe myself a witness." She didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling while the fan sliced the air above her like a slow pendulum. Outside, a car alarm chirped, once then fell quiet. Somewhere, a baby cried. The city moved on, indifferent. Her mind didn't wander. It knew exactly where it was going. At dawn, she rose and opened the closet. She chose the black dress. Not the lacy one from weddings long past, not the bright one Zuri once bought to celebrate her fire. No, this one was simple, long, fitted, black as the truth, a dress that said nothing but allowed no one to look away. She clipped on her mother's pearl earrings, pressed her fingers once to the box where her wedding ring used to be, then turned away. When the kids woke, she made them eggs and toast. Musa asked about the strange envelope. She said it was an invitation. Zola didn't look up, just ate her breakfast in silence. "You okay?" Musa asked, watching her closely. "I will be," she said. The drive took 2 hours. She didn't listen to music, didn't open the window, just watched the road, the trees blurring by, the occasional hawker waving at stopped cars with sun-warped snacks and plastic toys. The hotel appeared like a painting, too clean, too expensive, set against the sea like it had risen from the waves. Bellboys opened the doors without looking at her face. She stepped inside. The lobby glittered, chandeliers above, marble floors below. A faint scent of vanilla and ocean salt lingered in the air, artificial and perfectly measured. She followed the signs toward the ballroom. Every step felt like walking through fog. She passed mirrored walls, glanced sideways, and barely recognized the woman reflected back. Then the ballroom doors opened, and time cracked. White everywhere, tablecloths, orchids, candles, strings of fairy lights crisscrossed the ceiling like veins. Laughter floated through the air, brittle and too loud. And there he was, Kelechi, standing by the cake table, laughing, dressed in cream and gold. He looked older, thinner, but untouched by regret. His arm was around a woman in ivory silk. "Nyasha!" She was radiant, flawless, holding a champagne flute with fingers manicured to perfection. When she spotted Naledi, her brows lifted, but not in recognition. She leaned closer to Kelechi, whispered something. Kelechi turned, and his face drained of color. Naledi stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. The crowd parted like waves around her, eyes whispering louder than mouths. Nyasha looked between them, confused. "Who is that?" Naledi kept walking, her heels echoed like drum beats on polished floor. "I'm his wife," she said. Gasps rippled. Kelechi stammered. "Naledi, it's not... I didn't..." Naledi pulled a folded paper from her clutch, placed it gently on the table beside the untouched wedding cake. "A copy of our marriage certificate, filed, valid, never dissolved." Nyasha's hand trembled. "You said she signed. You said it was done." Kelechi looked like a man unraveling. Naledi met his eyes. 5 years, she said softly, of silence, of pretending we never existed. But you forgot one thing. She leaned closer, voice low but piercing. I remember everything. Then she turned, walked out, her spine straight, her pulse calm. Behind her, voices rose, shouting, a woman's cry, a man's desperate plea. She didn't look back. Outside, the sky had begun to change, clouds moving in, sea breeze colder now. She walked slowly to her car, the gravel crunching under her shoes like bones. Inside, she sat for a long time, hands on the wheel, breath shallow. Her phone buzzed. A message from Zuri. You okay? She typed one word back. Whole. Then set the phone down. And for the first time in years, smiled, not out of pride, not out of pain, but because she'd just buried something that never truly lived. The ballroom went quiet like a candle snuffed out mid-prayer. Naledi's heels clicked against the marble floor, each step slicing through silk music and brittle laughter. White petals scattered under her feet, crushed in her path like confetti from a lie. Kelechi stood at the altar, frozen in place, champagne glass tilted halfway to his lips. His smile collapsed before her eyes. In that moment, he wasn't a groom. He was a man caught naked in daylight, the lie unraveling faster than his breath. Nyasha turned slowly, confusion wrinkling her perfect brow. Who is that? Naledi kept walking. The crowd parted as though her presence carried weight or warning. She wore black, not out of mourning, not anymore. Black because it didn't beg for permission. Black because she was no longer afraid of shadows. She stopped a few feet from them, voice even. I'm Naledi Okoro. The bride blinked. I'm his wife. Gasps followed like a ripple in glass. Kelechi opened his mouth, but the words jammed somewhere between panic and shame. I brought a gift, Naledi added. She pulled a crisp envelope from her clutch and laid it gently on the altar, beside the pair of engraved champagne flutes and a pyramid of macarons that suddenly looked absurd. Our marriage certificate, never annulled, never divorced. Nyasha's hand went limp, her glass fell, the stem snapped. Champagne bled across the lace like a slow insult. Kelechi stepped forward. Naledi, don't do this here. You invited me, she said. Remember? The room tilted. Someone dropped a fork. A baby cried. An elderly man stood and left quietly, as if he couldn't watch the train hit the wall. You told me you'd changed, Naledi continued, voice low, almost kind. I believe you. You've become very good at pretending. Kelechi's face flushed. We were done. You moved on. I thought you signed the... She cut him off with a look. Not angry, not bitter, just done. You thought wrong. Nyasha turned to him, voice shaking. You lied. You told me it was over. He reached for her, desperate now. It was. She's just here to... Remind you, Naledi said gently, of who you still are. The bride stepped back. Her face changed, like something had cracked behind her eyes. You told me she left you, she whispered. Kelechi flinched. Naledi didn't say another word. She stepped down from the altar, turned, and walked the length of the ballroom as if the air had parted just for her. Behind her, murmurs rose. Some tried to hush them, others didn't bother. By the time she reached the door, the entire room had shifted. The music had stopped. The cake stood untouched. And Kelechi looked like a man remembering the consequences of every small choice he once justified. Naledi pushed open the door and stepped into the daylight. The sun was sharp. The wind had teeth, but it felt good. It felt real. She walked across the gravel path slowly, heels catching now and then on loose stones. Her breathing steadied with each step. Her fingers uncurled. At the car, she paused. Her hand trembled just slightly as she reached for the handle. Then she heard it. Footsteps behind her, quick, uneven, desperate. Kelechi's voice. Naledi, wait. She didn't turn. Please. He came closer, breath shallow, dress shoes slipping on gravel. I didn't know you'd show up. She finally turned her head. You asked me to. I meant it as closure, he stammered. I wanted peace, a clean start. She studied him. The suit looked expensive, but it didn't fit him the way truth would. There were sweat stains beneath the collar. His tie had shifted. His eyes, once smooth and convincing, now darted like birds in a cage. You don't get a clean start, she said. You get consequences. I'm sorry, he said, eyes wet. I made mistakes. You made choices. He took another step. Can I at least explain? Naledi inhaled. The scent of lavender and sea salt filled her lungs. You already did, she said. Every day you stayed gone. He tried to speak again, but no sound came. She opened the door. Naledi, what do I say to the kids? The question cracked the air between them. She turned fully now, met his gaze. Nothing, she said. You don't talk. You show up every day. You prove you're a father, not just a man who used to live in their pictures. He swallowed hard. She leaned slightly forward, her voice soft but sharper than any accusation. And until you do, you don't speak to me. You don't speak for me. Then she got in the car, closed the door, left him standing in the gravel, blinking against the sun. The drive back was silent, but not empty. Her hand stayed steady on the wheel. At a red light, she reached into her bag, pulled out her phone. 2 missed calls. One from Zuri, one from a number she didn't recognize. She texted Zuri. I'm fine. I told him the truth, finally. Then, just as the light turned green, a new message appeared from the unknown number. You made your point, but you ruined everything. She stared at the screen, then deleted the message. She didn't need to respond to ghosts. When she pulled into the apartment complex, the courtyard was alive with evening. Zola sat on the stoop drawing with chalk. Musa dribbled a ball nearby. They looked up when she arrived. Musa jogged over. You okay? She smiled. I am. Zola stood quietly, watching her mother's face with eyes far too wise for 11. Naledi crouched beside her. Do you want to help me make dinner? Zola nodded. Naledi took her hand, and in that touch was everything real, everything true. They walked inside together. Behind them, the sky darkened. A storm rolled in from the coast, but inside the lights were warm. The pots clanged. The onions sizzled, and for the first time in years, Naledi felt it. Peace. Not because the past had disappeared, but because it no longer decided who she was. She stirred the soup, tasted it, nodded, then whispered to no one in particular, I'm still here. And this time, she meant it. The first time Naledi saw the video, it was blurry, grainy, almost like an accident. The angle shook. Someone's hand trembled while recording, but the voice was unmistakable. Kelechi. And her own. Her words from the wedding. Calm, precise, cutting like glass. The moment she placed the envelope down, the look on his face when Nyasha stepped back in horror. The silence that followed her exit. It spread like fire. By Monday morning, the clip had racked up 200,000 views. By Wednesday, it was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, the evening news. The legal wife who shut down the wedding of the year. Someone even slowed the audio and added dramatic music. Others added subtitles and reaction emojis. Memes were born overnight. The hashtags were merciless. Sakur she never signed. Sakur karma in heels. Sakur wedding ruined by truth. Queen Naledi. Zuri sent her screenshots all day. Some made her laugh. Others made her stomach turn. Then came the fallout. Kelechi's company terminated his contract. Public scandal clause. Sponsors pulled out of deals. Nyasha's family distanced themselves, releasing a statement that included the words deceived, dishonorable, and unacceptable. His name was Mud, and for once, Naledi had nothing to do with it. She stayed quiet, said no interviews, turned down offers, declined podcasts and TV talk shows begging to tell the whole story. She wasn't interested in performing her pain. But Kelechi, he didn't have the luxury of silence. He showed up at her building 3 days after the story broke. No car, no suitcase, no smile. Just a man in a wrinkled shirt, holding a letter in his hand like it might save him from drowning. Naledi saw him through the peephole. She didn't open the door. Not at first. She watched him shift from foot to foot, lean his head against the wall, then sit on the floor. After 10 minutes, she opened it. He looked up, eyes red, jaw unshaven, shoulders caved in. Can we talk? He said. No, she answered, voice flat, but you can speak. He held out the envelope. I wrote something. She didn't reach for it. He hesitated, then placed it on the mat. I don't expect anything, he said. I needed to say it, somewhere, to someone who remembers me before I ruined everything. Naledi said nothing. He looked down. I see you kept your name. It's mine, she said. He nodded, then stood slowly, like gravity had changed just for him. Before he turned to go, he whispered, "Tell the kids I'm sorry." She shut the door gently, locked it. Only then did she pick up the letter. The paper was thick, expensive. The ink, blue, rushed, smeared in places. Naledi, I've spent the last 5 days losing everything I thought I built. But what hurts most is realizing I lost the only thing that ever mattered a long time ago. I can't undo what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know, it wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because I wasn't. I didn't know how to be a father and a man at the same time. I didn't know how to stay when things got real. You loved me with your whole heart, and I ran like a coward. Now I wake up in someone else's silence, and all I hear is your voice telling me what truth sounds like. Tell Musa I'm proud of him. Tell Zola I'm sorry I missed her becoming herself. If I never see you again, just know you were my only home, and I burned it. K. She folded the letter. No tears came, only breath-deep grounding. Later that night, she found Zola asleep on the couch, one hand curled under her cheek, the other still holding a crayon. A drawing rested on her lap. Naledi lifted it gently. It was a house. 3 windows, 2 figures outside, a sun above them. Just 2. Naledi ran her fingers across the paper, following the lines Zola had drawn so confidently. She didn't add him, not even in the background. He was already gone in her world. In Musa's too. That weekend, while shopping for groceries, Musa pointed at a tabloid by the register. Kalechi's face, captioned with the word, collapse. Musa turned away. Naledi didn't speak. Back home, the doorbell rang. Another letter. No sender. Just her name neatly printed. Inside, photos, old ones, their wedding, Musa's birth, Zola's first birthday, handwritten notes on the back. Forgive me for missing this. Naledi placed the envelope in the drawer where she kept documents, next to the insurance letter he once tried to hide. She lit a candle that evening. Lavender, her mother's favorite scent. Let it burn while she made dinner. The kids laughed in the kitchen. Zuri came by with banana bread and that sharp look in her eyes that said she already knew. They didn't talk about him. They talked about life, rent, Zola's grades, Musa's upcoming game. But when the wind picked up outside and the flame on the candle flickered, Naledi looked toward the window. She whispered, not to Zuri, not to the kids, but to herself. Let it all fall apart. I'm still standing. And outside, the night nodded back. The sound of eggs sizzling in a cast-iron pan filled the small kitchen, competing with bursts of laughter that bounced off the tiled walls. Musa stood barefoot in pajama pants, flipping slices of toast with exaggerated flair. Zola leaned on her elbows at the counter, hair messy, still warm from sleep, singing off-key just to annoy him. Naledi stood in the doorway, holding a chipped mug of black coffee, watching. Not interrupting, not correcting, just watching. The morning light fell soft across the floor, golden and patient, cutting through the lace curtain in slow-moving angles. Outside, the world carried on. Car horns, delivery trucks, dogs barking at shadows. But inside the apartment, time had slowed to something almost holy. Zola dropped a piece of egg. Musa laughed like he hadn't been carrying the weight of other people's mistakes since age 10. And Naledi, for once, didn't flinch. She hadn't slept much, but she wasn't tired. Something in her had settled, like mud after a storm, thick and grounded. Zuri arrived with a knock that didn't wait for permission. She walked in, kissed the top of Zola's head, shoved Musa playfully out of the way, and plopped a pink bakery box on the table. Happy, almost free from drama day, she declared. Naledi smirked. That's not a real holiday. It is now, Zuri said, opening the box to reveal 4 oversized cinnamon rolls glistening with cream cheese glaze. You've been in the headlines again, she added, mouth already full. Naledi raised an eyebrow. Zuri pulled out her phone and read, Single mother who shut down cheating ex-husband's wedding now spotted smiling at grocery store. Sources say she's glowing. Musa groaned. They really wrote that? Zola giggled. Mom, you're famous. Naledi shook her head, sipping her coffee. Let them talk. Talking keeps them busy.
Living, Zuri said between bites, keeps them mad.
Naledi smiled, not because it was clever, but because it was true. She set the mug down and began clearing the table. No rush, no tension, just hands moving through a rhythm she now knew by heart. In the back of the drawer, beneath spare batteries and rubber bands, she found it again. A white envelope, slightly yellowed now. The wedding invitation. She held it, felt the weight of the past packed into folded paper, then flipped it over. The handwriting, Kelechi's, still looked deliberate, the kind of careful a liar uses when trying to sound sincere. She reached for a pen, drew a thick blue line through the words, "I've changed," and wrote beneath it in firm letters, "I survived," then tucked it back where it belonged, not to remember him, but to remind herself. Later that afternoon, while sweeping under the couch cushions, she found one of Musa's old asthma inhalers. Expired, light as air. She turned it in her hand, thumb brushing the worn-out label. It used to scare her. The thought of not having enough, not being enough, not saving everyone fast enough. Now it just felt like proof. Proof she'd kept them breathing. Kept them whole. She threw it away. The evening brought quiet, the kind she had earned. She stood by the window while Zola watered the houseplants and Musa did his math homework at the table. The wind lifted the curtains slightly, carrying with it the smell of roasted corn from a street vendor below. Across the room, the drawer remained open. The letter from Kelechi still lay there. She hadn't replied. She wouldn't. Not because she hated him, but because nothing needed saying anymore. He had made his bed, in lies, in absence, in half versions of love. She had made her home, in truth, in effort, in nights spent holding sick children without anyone holding her. That was the difference. Zuri called later that night. Her voice buzzed with a quiet kind of joy. "You're good," she said. "I can hear it in your breath." Naledi didn't argue. "I dreamt of him again," she said softly. "But this time, I didn't run." Zuri was silent for a beat. "What did you do?" Naledi leaned against the wall, phone warm in her hand. "I told him he doesn't live here anymore." Outside, the streetlights hummed. Inside, the air felt light. A soft knock came at the front door. Musa opened it. A neighbor stood there with a note, handwritten, folded twice, no envelope. Naledi took it, unfolded. 4 words.
"Can I see them?"
She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there breathing. Musa's voice came from behind her. "It's from him, isn't it?" She turned, his eyes were steady. Zola peeked from the hallway. The apartment pulsed with silence. Then Naledi stepped forward, paper still in hand. She didn't tear it. She didn't answer it. She just folded it one more time, tucked it behind a magnet on the fridge. Next to Musa's scholarship letter, next to Zola's drawing of their family, 3 people holding hands beneath a crooked sun. The fridge had no room for ghosts. That night they ate late, just grilled cheese and tomato soup, but it tasted like celebration. After dinner, Zola curled next to her on the couch. Musa lay on the rug, arms behind his head, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow. The room smelled of soup and warm bread and safety. The kind of safety Naledi once thought only came from being loved by a man. Now she knew better. Safety was earned, built, maintained like an old garden, weeds pulled, roots protected. As she tucked Zola in that night, the little girl whispered, "I like our life." Naledi kissed her forehead. "Me too." In her own room, she stood in front of the mirror, touched the edge of her reflection. No makeup, no jewelry, just her. And that was enough. Before turning off the light, she reached for the old shoebox under her bed. Inside, letters, receipts, cufflinks, and a single gold wedding ring. She looked at it one last time, then walked quietly to the kitchen, opened the window, and dropped it. No sound, no ceremony, just gravity and closure. She turned back toward the living room. Zuri's box still sat on the counter, one last cinnamon roll inside. She took it out, sat down, took a bite, and smiled. Not because she'd won, but because she was full. There are stories that don't shout. They don't arrive in a blaze of triumph or end with a perfect bow. Instead, they breathe quietly, woven through the ordinary, whispered through the cracks. Stories like this aren't about winning or losing. They're about surviving what should have broken you, about waking up each day and choosing to keep going, even when no one is watching. Some wounds don't leave visible scars. They linger in silence, in empty chairs, in half-answered questions, in the way someone folds laundry just to feel control. But even the deepest wounds can become doorways, not to the past, not to what was lost, but to something gentler, acceptance. It's not revenge that heals. It's dignity. The choice to carry yourself forward without bitterness. the courage to stay soft in a world that tried to harden you. True strength isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It's found in quiet resilience, in laughter that returns after grief, in a hand reaching for peace instead of blame. And perhaps the most radical act of all is to live well, not to prove anything, not to make someone regret, but because you finally believe you deserve the life they told you was out of reach. Sometimes healing looks like a clean kitchen, a child's drawing on the fridge, a phone that doesn't ring, a name you no longer say out loud. Sometimes it's nothing more than a deep breath at sunrise, or the taste of cinnamon in warm bread, or the simple fact that you woke up and didn't feel like crying. Because some storms don't come to destroy, they come to clear the path. And what's waiting on the other side, no matter how quiet, how humble, is freedom. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched something inside you, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters here. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Until then, stay kind, stay brave, and remember, even in the quietest endings, there is strength.